when we were taking reports back from the back end, we had about 982 polling units already reported, and part of the reports we got was that from the 982 polling units where reports came in, about 52.5% of those polling units actually had INEC officials arriving on time, and then the others where we didn't have INEC officials arriving, we had about 10% of that also where INEC officials did not arrive even up to 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Then also on the performance of the beavers, we had about 72% of those 982 polling units where the beavers worked very well in authentication of accreditation of voters there. The challenge that they had was that in areas, about 24% of the areas where the beavers didn't work, the reasons they gave for the challenge were one, that the INEC officials in some of those places were not very familiar with the operations of the beavers. They also complained about network issues. They complained that some of the ad hoc staff said they didn't get the right code for the beavers, so it was difficult for them to open the beavers to work with. So those were generally the problems that they had. And again, the beavers was better in capturing, doing facial recognitions than finger recognitions across those areas where they said the beavers had issues. One of the polling units I went to here in Abuja, that's Karomajiji Primary School along the airport road, INEC officials didn't come on time. Elections started there around 11:30. But by the time elections started there and they were accrediting voters, it took less than a minute to be able to accredit a particular voter. We also saw that facial recognition was better than the finger recognition. Interestingly, there was a polling unit we observed during the FCT local government elections in Gariki, close to the FCMB. At that time, there were only 2 registered voters on that polling unit. INEC actually deployed to that polling unit during the local government elections, but the 2 people didn't even come out to vote, but INEC was there. So I took it upon myself to revisit that polling unit again. I found out that now you have 32 registered voters on that polling unit, and as at 12 noon on Saturday, 25 of those 32 people had voted in that particular polling unit. And so I went to ask people why they felt. A lot of them were happy that they were moved to that polling unit. It was closer to them. It was more comfortable to them. And one very interesting thing, there was a woman I saw, a woman with albinism that I saw, who came to the Karomajiji polling unit to vote. She was voting for the first time all her life. Unfortunately, though, they didn't have the magnifying glass for her there to use, but she came with her own glasses. Then she complained that there was no proper education. Now and that also came back from our observers across the 982 polling units that they observed. They said in areas where INEC officials came late, because they were in a hurry to set up, they did not educate the voters on what to do. So they were not able to tell the voters which color of the ballot paper you're using for presidential, senatorial, and for the House of Representatives. Perhaps when they start sorting, you will now see that voters were putting presidential ballot papers into senatorial boxes. And that there was an interesting one that came back. They mistakenly used the red cover to cover the presidential and use, and voters said they were not going to vote. They were not going to start voting, that INEC was going to rig election in that place until the supervisory officer came. The same thing happened in one of the polling units where the ad hoc staff actually stopped party agents from voting. Even though they had their PVC registered in that particular polling unit, it almost caused a problem in that polling unit. So they had to call their SPO, who came to say anybody with a voter's card for any particular polling, especially party agents, should be allowed to vote. All of this shows that some of those ad hoc staff were either not properly trained and all of that. And then on the performance of security agents, we agree that there was some professionalism up to because of the way they performed, but there are some little gaps, things that were taken for granted. For instance, the report also shows that all the stakeholders in the electoral circle are making efforts to make our elections better, but the politicians are not doing anything to make it better. Now, there is a particular tag that INEC has done for accreditation of party agents with their pictures on top, the INEC logo, the party logo. You go to the polling unit, you are seeing 10 party agents at the polling unit and maybe 1 or 2 persons with that particular ID card. And even when you are called them, say, excuse me, are you a party agent? They know that some of those party agents are using the wrong tags. So they show you their tag and they use their hand to cover the picture so that you will not understand that it is not their name. It is when you now go further to say, please, can I see? And you find out that the person that is wearing that tag is not his name or her name. It's not the person. Meanwhile, you have other party agents with very big signposts on their on them that reads parties supervisor, facilitator, and the police is not pointing them out. The police actually should arrest such persons because INEC has gone a step further to provide identification for party agents on the field, but you don't see that happen. And then the same Karamajiji community where I went personally, that's the only case actually where we saw vigilantes now operating. The Inspector General of Police had said that vigilantes were not going to be the part of the security personnel, but for that very community to gain entrance into the polling unit, you have to be cleared by the vigilante, and the vigilante outnumbered the number of security agents that you had there. At a point in time, we were living there at about 12:30. We're leaving the place. We saw vigilante coming in with arms into that particular polling unit. So that's where the issue about who should be on a polling unit. And then maybe finally the idea of political party, officials, candidates, senior officials who come to a polling unit to vote, and they come with a retinue of aides. Now, the Electoral Act and the guidelines has also listed people who should legally be on a polling unit. Who are those people? Security agents, accredited party agents, observers, media, and the candidate with a PVC registered to that particular polling unit, because at that point in time, the candidate is not a party agent. He is like every other person. Now, what happens is they come in, and it's not just political leaders that are, even community leaders are doing that now. At one of the polling units, we're saying, you have come now, you have disrupted. Because what they do is that they disrupt the process. Everybody on the queue will have to give way for such a prominent person to cast his or her vote, and it takes some time, and you see them crowding around the voting area. Unlike the guideline of the INEC that says there is an outer ring and an inner ring, it is only people who want to vote that should be in that inner ring. Now you come with your retinue of aides, and all of you crowd into that inner ring. You have disrupted the process. You have not allowed people to cast their vote, and eventually when you cast your vote, you're now bringing out your ballot paper and showing it to everybody as if that is the standard and the procedure. Meanwhile, if any voter in that same polling unit does the same thing, he or she will be arrested because he or she will be accused of vote trading. So these are some of the things, and then maybe some of the good side was that for the first time we saw INEC staff and even citizens understand that there are people you should give priority to: pregnant women, nursing mothers, old people, persons with disability. In the Karamajiji area, there is a special polling unit for persons with disability. Polling unit 045 is made, they call it the Disability Community Polling Unit. They all came to cast their vote, but they had to direct them to say, you now have your own polling unit, you can actually go. So these are just, for me, it was more like a mixed bag of some things that went well.